Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Journee Girls Club podcast. We have got the wonderful Nicole with us today, and Nicole, you actually joined in October, correct? So we've been friends. We know each other for quite a while at this point. So I feel like there's lots to talk about. But do you want to just give us like a very brief introduction into what you do, just super cash, you know?
Yes, it is true. It was October and it's unbelievable. It has been more than 6 months. And I don't know if you remember that, but I told you, yeah, I've probably joined for 3 months. It has been, we're on month 7. Yeah. So, hello everyone. My name is Nicole. I am Bulgarian, but I'm based in Lithuania, in Vilnius, Lithuania for already 10 years. So this is where I'm joining from. I am a feminine success coach, which is a very fancy way to say that I work with ambitious, soul-led women who are ready to break free from hustle culture and build success in a more aligned, sustainable, and joyful way.
Oh, amazing. Well, I mean, I'm glad that you brought up success immediately because I think that obviously everyone that listens to a sort of podcast like this is obviously an ambitious female founder, whether you're at like the beginning stages of your business or maybe a little bit further on. I think everyone is obviously chasing that like element of success, right? So like, the first question I have for you is like, you, out of all the women that you work with, do you see any patterns in the success that women want versus like what do women really want that they're too scared to admit that they actually want, if that makes sense?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. And also, like in my head right now, Elizabeth, I'm debating, should I sing Spice Girls? So tell me what you want, what you want. All right, but
Go for it. We've got time.
no, I'm not a very good singer yet. Maybe one day I'll develop. But anyhow, that is what came up for me. In regards to patterns, 1,000%, they are patterns. So something that I like to do in my business, 2 to 3 times a year, I run this reflection survey. And Elizabeth, you know what I mean. It's a kind of a beautiful reflection exercise that I invite women into. And one of the questions is to describe what success means to you or what your ideal workday looks like, your ideal lifestyle. Every time it's a little bit different. But the topics and the themes that come out from this question are so similar, which is actually so funny, because so many of us think that what we're pursuing or even the challenges that we meet on the path to success are very unique, and sometimes we even feel a little bit isolated or alone in the pursuit of these things. But actually, they're so universal. So I'll tell you a few things that immediately come to my mind. The first topic that always comes up is women always mention how they imagine their ideal morning. And keep in mind, this is never the question, but people always put a lot of effort. Probably if they would write 10 sentences or 7 sentences, half of them would just be describing the morning. And the feeling that comes in those responses is also so universal. So it appears that most of us want to start the day with more space, with peace, with a little bit of time for the self, and that looks very different. Some women say, I want to work out. Some people say, I just want to drink my cup of tea in peace and quiet or journal a little bit, right? So we differ in this way, but the feeling that we're pursuing is so universal, like the peace, the quiet, the spaciousness. Another thing is most women say that they want to work around 5, maximum 6 hours a day, which to me, once I start working with some of these women, it is almost like cutting their times by half sometimes. So, there is this deep desire to work less, but what it looks like in reality might be very different. So this is the second thing that comes to mind. And another thing that comes to mind is, of course, people mention the external ways to measure success. So maybe that is clients, maybe that is money, maybe it's unlocking a new income bracket. But always, 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 this is paired with a sense of purpose and a sense of service, and how can my work and how can I, as a professional, impact people in a deep way. So we tend to really come out of service, and it seems that for us the best way to manifest success is to come from this, place of contribution, of soulful impact. So this is another big theme that always comes up.
Yeah, definitely. Does anything come up where it's like, so I've got loads of questions, but loads of things that I want to talk about just from what you said alone, basically. But like, do you think there's anything where, like, secretly women want something that maybe it's not quite as socially acceptable to admit? I feel like you sort of touched on that one with the work one, but I feel like so many people are going to be like, oh my god, yes, that's me, I'd love to work less. But like, is there anything where people are, maybe it's a little bit of a touchy subject for people to admit that that's what success means to them?
Actually, I do think that for women, admitting out loud that they want to work 4 or 5 hours is a touchy subject.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So this is definitely a touchy subject. And another, probably two that come to mind immediately is, first of all, making a lot of money. That is a touchy subject. Like, I see that sometimes even just what people unlock from filling in the survey is this realization of, oh my god, I actually voiced it out, or I admitted to somebody that this is what I truly want. Because again, there is a little bit of conditioning that it's super acceptable for men to want to make millions, but I don't know if we're still in a place in society that it is as acceptable for women to be that ambitious and go for the same milestones. So that's definitely another topic of conversation. So this is, the second one. So working less, making a lot of money, and also being seen in leadership positions. I think that this is also like a little bit of shadows that are coming up.
So like power.
Yeah, that's even a better way to say it, although actually it's almost never said this way.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
that's definitely it. Yeah, you really tapped on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting, right? Because I think there's a lot of parts to, say, like feminine success, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more, but like there's so many parts of feminine success that are, that are not that different from the vision that we have for success. It's just that women get there in a different way than is, naturally portrayed in society or through media even, right? Like Wolf of Wall Street, great example. Like, how many men are in that movie when there's not a single like woman in positions of power? And I think it's like, those are the sorts of things that maybe, I think can still be a little bit, I don't know, maybe a little bit icky to talk about, but it's only because of, the picture that we have of how you are meant to get there. So like, I wasn't really expecting to ask you this question, but like, in your opinion, like, what's the difference between, obviously, like the more standard way that we know, men to become millionaires versus how does a woman become a millionaire? I wasn't expecting to ask that, but you've just like, you pulled that thought out of my brain.
I love that. I'm going to tell you once I get there. But I know what you mean. So it's not even just about the number itself. It's just getting the status and getting the external results, and also how we get there, but also how we handle it. And like $1 million is just yet another unlocked level, but we get to that $1 million the same way that we're gonna get to our first 5K, 10K, and so on and so forth, right? Like keep on going up and up. So that's such a big question.
Very loaded question. Yeah, I mean, we still do have like 45 minutes, but still.
But still, like such a big question. Like, how do women get there? Well, I'm going to start, like more based on the conversations that I have in my daily work, and let's just, use that as a starting point. But the first thing is, I think, accepting that your rhythm is a little bit different, and especially if you want to get to that level in a way that you don't sacrifice your health and you stay mentally sane and you don't have to go against your values, and you don't have to sacrifice parts of yourself, which for me is the ultimate level of success. Achieving the external success, but also keeping yourself, keeping your integrity, keeping your discernment, keeping your joy, keeping your health. And sometimes I like to ask on social media, do you think your goals are worth achieving if you're super miserable in the process? Right?
Yeah.
It's something that we don't ask ourselves a lot, and yet a lot of people take action against what they would usually answer. So the first thing is, just accept yourself. Accept that you as a woman have a different biological rhythm compared to men. And on the most basic building block is biology. And as much as we try, we cannot override biology for a really long time. Of course we can for a limited amount of time, right? But if we're talking about sustainable success, then we can only go against our nature this much. And to be even more precise, here I'm talking about the menstrual cycle, I'm talking about hormones, I'm talking about how your nervous system is wired and what are some of the prerequisites for women to feel good on the way to building this massive success. So let's start from here.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that you touched on something there as well that reminds me of the name of your podcast. So everyone, obviously Nicole's got a podcast that everyone should definitely check out called Sanely Successful. And when I read that as a title for a podcast, I was like, oh my Lord, that is the best name for a podcast I've ever heard. Because I think that is like you said, that's like the real flex, right? Is that you still get to keep intact all of the things that, bring you joy, that you like want to pursue outside of just the work, that actually feeds back into you being, say, like a better business owner, right? So that's a really interesting one, because I feel like this idea of again, productivity and what you just said about women wanting to work less, right? And I think what you said about the morning routine thing, I think is very much, especially because you're talking to mostly business owners, right, or entrepreneurs, that sort of thing. I think that is the active removal of hustle and work culture, right? Just even the 9 to 5 is the main problem with the 9 to 5. The first problem that you faced is the fact that you've got to get up at a ridiculous hour, and you've got to go and sit on a train, and you've got to go and walk through the rain, and all of these different things where it's you are actively every single morning as someone working a 9 to 5, especially one that you don't enjoy. And if you're not working from home, bonus points if you're not working from home, because that's even worse in my opinion. But you're waking up and immediately, even with your alarm, going into a state of shock in most cases as the first thing in your day. I think that a little bit of very getting chased by a bear vibes might work for guys, to be oh, I'm up and I'm out and I'm ready to go fight. But for women, it's just oh my God, I'm being chased by a bear the moment that I wake up, and I'm supposed to go about my day as if nothing happened and do it every single day, right? So I can see where that the morning part is such a prevalent part of people's ideal lifestyles, because that's the thing that I think suffers the most at the hands of the society that we live in currently.
I agree, and there's kind of cliche saying that the day goes as it starts.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't always believe in that, but I think that for the usual day when nothing extraordinary happens, we do tend to bring the morning energy into the day. And I've worked with women in career now, as you correctly said. I work mainly with fempreneurs and women who have their own businesses, but I've done quite a lot of coaching on, how to change the energy throughout the day if something happens. So it is possible, but this is more of a, we're proactively fixing something, you know, that we don't want to carry. But wouldn't it be so much better, right, to start on the right energy and just bring whatever energy we want to bring into the day? And it's not even always that we want to bring those super zen vibes and, you know, like at some point there was this soft CEO trend on Instagram, which was super aesthetic, and the fempreneurs and feminine CEOs were doing the matcha in the morning, and you know the yoga sequence, and yeah, but it's not always about that. I mean, I don't know about you, but some days, yeah, sure, I want to bring in a little bit of zen into my work, but some days I want to bring fire into my work. So then, you know, how to cultivate the energy and the vibe that I really want to bring into my workday, that I really need into my workday, you know, into it. So that's all it really is, just having the space, the tools, and the capacity to bring the right energy into the day, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really interesting point, right? Because I think that there's maybe, I mean, I think it's a bit of a spectrum, but then when I think about some of the people that I know that are like super crazy with their morning routines, I think almost fall into like a secondary trap sometimes of, you know, they're waking up really early to do all of their morning routine that's supposed to make them feel really like zen and really grounded. And then by 9 a.m. they're exhausted because they've ticked like 47 things off their list. And I'm like, wow, you've already done a day's worth of work in your morning routine by the time I'm waking up. Like, how do you feel about that? Or do you notice any patterns in that?
Yeah. You know, I even want to talk here more about, you know, my personal experience, and I'll ask you how you handle that. You know, it's not even that much about my work because it's super individual for everybody. But for example, I feel like in my 20s, and so just for context, in my 20s, I moved to Lithuania, maybe I was around 23. I started building my career literally from the bottom in customer support. I worked shifts where all of my time was being, you know, monitored. Literally every 30 seconds counted, right? And then slowly I built my career in corporate, and I transitioned to startup, and only then I ended up with my own business. So I feel that through this career journey, and especially in my 20s, there was a lot of experimentation. And I have tried so many different approaches to how a morning routine would look like to me, and also because I changed so many different work styles and work environments. And I feel like it's super important to acknowledge that for different seasons of life, the morning routine would look different. Now, I've tried super structured morning routines, you know, like 5 things, they need to happen in this order, you know, da-da-da-da. I've tried, you know, just winging it completely. Then at some point I adopted the cutest dog, and that really put a stop in me winging it completely, because there is always a component of go outside with the dog, so it kind of anchors my routine. But what I have found out through this journey of self-awareness and experimentation is basically that for me it works best when I have a container. And a container is basically time that I know is allocated for myself. And I also want to tell you that for me that container changes drastically even with just the seasons of nature. Because I live in Lithuania, here it's super dark, super cold, super gloomy during the winter, right? It doesn't get bright outside until 9 a.m. in the darkest weeks, which is crazy. So naturally my window shrinks, and maybe like I feel like I could take around 20 minutes for myself. Now we're going towards summer, it's bright very early, I get up at 7 and I have almost a whole hour for myself. So this is my container, and it shrinks and expands depending on, you know, what life looks like. And then with that container, I allow myself the beautiful flexibility of doing whatever I want. Now, at this point in my life, I'm also very aware of my energy and how I feel in the morning and what my body and my soul and my brain need. So sometimes this looks like I would do a 25-minute workout. So this is my high energy date. Maybe that's like peak ovulation. Maybe it's my follicular phase in my cycle, right? Maybe it's like super sunny outside and I really feel like doing this, right? Other days I'm like, no, you cannot pay me enough to work out today. So I sit for meditation and I do just like a very gentle shake off or something. And other days I just allow myself to sleep 30 minutes more. But this is just my container for self-care. And how self-care would look like today or for this week is subject basically to my own discernment and flexibility. And I feel this is one of those, I feel like at this point it's a good example of how you can have a little bit of structure and container, but also allow yourself to really feel into what you need. So this is how it looks like for me right now. How does it look like for you?
I think, well, when you're talking, I think like, oh, I don't have anything like that. But then I wonder whether I actually do, because in my mind, I have the benefit currently of being on the Asia side of the world, right? So if you really wanted to talk about it in UK terms, I get up at 3 a.m. and I grind set my way until 12. And then, like while everyone's asleep, whatever, like I've got the benefit of like an extra 6 hours of being awake before I feel like the entire world is starting to wake up, right? So I think that is really kind of healing, kind of necessary, I think, especially for this part of my life. And yeah, like when you were talking, I'm thinking, I don't necessarily have a container, but in my mind, my workday starts at like 10, like Vietnam time. So for that reason, then I have like, I can do whatever I want. Most of the time it's stay in bed because I will probably like work in the evenings also. So, I think my like break times usually come in the day. But when it comes to like a routine, I think I'm quite similar to you where it's like my routine, the thing that makes me feel best in the morning is to get a little bit of work done. That'd be mine, even if it's just like, oh well, I'll just check this or I'll just have a little play with this. Oftentimes like I'm working on something that I find really enjoyable and really fun, and therefore like, and I have a bit of an addictive personality anyway, so I'm just like, oh, it'd be lovely to just like jump back on base 44 or go back to vibe coding, whatever the hell I'm vibe coding, like stuff like that where it's like it's play and therefore it's like a little treat. But yeah, I find that really interesting in terms of like the plan, in terms of like using your morning as a container and spending what energy you feel like you can spend that will also, like you said, like give you that return as well. I think if your morning routine is exhausting you, then you're not getting the return on that investment, and therefore maybe you could do with trying something else.
This is such a good point. I love how you phrased it with the return on investment, because a morning routine ultimately really needs to bring you that return on your investment. And I see a few kind of like little traps or challenges that happen here. First of all, we tend to think that the more time we put in, the more return on the investment we're gonna get, but that's actually not true. Right? Because you can spend 1 hour half asleep trying to force yourself into doing something, or you can, take half an hour to sleep, sit for 5 minutes with a hand on your heart, take 5 deep breaths, enjoy your cup of coffee, and feel much better. So
Yeah.
really, really
Sounds thrilling.
Exactly. So, like just work with yourself, like get to know your energy, what is really going to give you the energy that you want today. And as a woman, especially if you're somebody who is working with a regular menstrual cycle, even if this is already going towards perimenopause, we are very used to work with menstrual cycle at that point, and you probably already can notice how your energy shifts throughout the month, right? So let's start accounting for those shifts, and instead of trying hard to override them or fight them or prove to ourselves, oh, look how consistent I could be even when I don't feel like it. Like, this is your self-care. Why would you want to push consistency when you don't feel like it into the thing that is supposed to recharge you and nourish you?
Yeah. I think that's really interesting because it's like, I think I don't know if this is controversial or not, but sometimes I just feel like the best self-care is just doing whatever the hell you want. Like I feel like like
Yeah.
I say that's controversial because I think like sometimes what you want to do versus what is actually what you know is good for you long term are two different things, right? Because like there's not that many days. I'm quite a regular gym goer, but there's not that many days that I want to go, right? So if I was doing whatever the hell I wanted, I'd be in bed scrolling on Instagram, which I do a fair amount. I'll confess, I do a very, a very chronically online amount. So, whatever. But moving swiftly on, I do feel like it's one of those things where sometimes the best thing that you can do for yourself is just be like, listen, you've worked for this life that you've built for yourself. Why are you becoming like subservient to it in whatever, a past version of you has decided is the ultimate morning routine. And therefore now the current you's got to like, just like wither away over the next like year and a half while you continue to try and do this in the name of, I don't know, in the name of consistency, in the name of following through. Like how do you feel about that?
I cannot agree more. And while you were telling all of this, I was thinking, trying to force yourself into something that doesn't feel very good is like, imagine you're working in Europe, right? And then for a week, you go to Asia and there is this huge time difference. And instead of adjusting to the time difference, you just keep on pushing yourself to get up in the middle of the night and do the whole thing, even though it doesn't serve you because probably your audience is sleeping, your clients are sleeping, but you're like, no, we need to show up, we need to have this coaching call exactly at the same time. And I'm like, but why? Like if this is something external, we will see the disconnect very quickly. But usually when it's internal and it's with our energy, we just are so used to override that energy. We're like, oh, this is inconvenient, but I'm strong. I'm a strong woman. I'm a resilient woman, like I'm a go-getter. So I can push through this.
Yeah. But
And I think
it's not that exciting. It's not something to be proud of necessarily if it's not serving you, right?
yeah, and also I think that this also relates to the first question that you asked me. How do women get to success in a different way? This is one of the things. I mean, we have nothing to prove. We, and again, this comes from having the feeling that you have something to prove. But do you really need to prove that you're biologically made up in a different way? Like, where is that coming from? And I'm asking that with all of my love in my heart. Like, just ask yourself, why do I need to prove so hard to whomever? And by the way, ask yourself also to whom am I trying to prove this? Because most of the time you can't even place it. It's just
Yeah.
something that we do year after year and we even forget why we started. So, like, ask yourself, like, why do I have this obsessive need to prove that I can force myself, into doing something that I don't feel like it, or to override my energy, or to show that I'm consistent? Who am I trying to show this to? Just question
Yeah.
it. Like, so much of breaking free from that hustle culture and that grind mentality is questioning, where is it coming from? What am I trying to do? Why? And does it actually really serve me?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really interesting. Also, going a little bit back to what we were talking about before, in that same vein, is we've talked about this before in our one-to-one that we did together, of like this idea of wanting to work less. Like I feel like sometimes there's this idea of wanting to work more or showcase that you're working more, even though we've all sort of agreed that if you could, like the 4-hour work week, we've all as a society agreed that you're actually the bee's knees if you're not working a lot but still making a lot of money. But then if you're in that in-between phase where maybe you're not making as much money as you'd like to, or at least you're not making enough money to be able to write a book about how little you work, then like at that point it's like, okay, I need to prove that I'm earning the right to earn all this money or whatever that might be. I need to prove that I'm worthy of earning this money. Like you say, depending on who you're trying to prove that to, it could be, it's like usually it's like a family member's voice in your head or something like that, where it's like, I'm trying to prove to this person that I'm capable, that I'm worthy, blah 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 blah. Right. That's all clear. But then I think that's where I think this idea of like overworking or overextending yourself to work, say like 12-hour days, especially as a founder, especially in startup world, like all of those sorts of things, they are a badge of honor. And of course, for women, that does not work. But then what we've talked about this, like I say, in our one-to-one, of this feeling of enoughness, like what actually does constitute, especially for women, having worked enough to only have to work, say, like 5 or 6 hours. If your goal is to work 6 hours a day, then how do you justify that in the sense of what quantifies as enough work for that day?
This is such a good question, and it's one of those things that we can take a look at from many different perspectives. So maybe I'll start a little bit further away from the point because I'm a projector and I like to talk.
Let's make our way. We'll make our way towards the point.
But we tend to confuse. This is not we women. This is we, our generation. And I know that you're Gen Z, I'm a millennial, but the system, the work systems are changing very slowly. So, probably we've had very similar experiences here and there. And so we, as the modern workforce, especially in the Western world, if I can, generalize like this, because it's not only women, we kind of tend to have a little bit of a mix-up in terminology between impact and output, and we don't always think about whether our output equals our impact. So when I think about the output, I'm thinking about the effort that I've put, about the hours that I have put, about the mental energy that I have put into my work, right? So literally output, how much did I put in it, out of myself into something else? And then we have impact. Impact is what results did I actually create? And not always, actually very rarely, there is a very pure equal sign between our output and our impact. And I think that part of this conundrum of, I want to work less hours, but how can I work less hours? How would I allow myself to work less hours? Part of that conundrum comes out from the fact that, again, we tend to think of hours as impact and not as output. Because you can do the simple math. Like, think about the last time you, stayed up late or had a drink with your girlfriends. And then on the next day, you didn't sleep enough, maybe you were a bit dehydrated, you were not at your best. So you showed up for your 8 hours or 10 hours, but how did you feel? You probably felt drained, uninspired, like everything felt like a chore that day. And did you really do your best work? Probably not. Output was there, hours were there, you showed up, you logged in everywhere, you were in your inbox, you were on social media, like you did everything. The output was there. The impact, not so much. And then think also about an example in your life when you showed up at your absolute best. Maybe it was right after a vacation, maybe you felt very inspired about something that you're creating, and you just showed up with your best energy. And probably in 3 hours, you did more than you achieved in those 8 hours of, you feeling bad. So this is the first thing that we really need to differentiate, is that your impact is not proportional to the amount of hours that you work. So if you want to work less hours, then the question becomes, how do you create more impact in the hours that you work? This is the first step.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think once you've got that on lock, I'm asking this very selfishly actually, but once you've got that on lock, it's a good opportunity. It's a good opportunity, I suppose. Once you've, because I know that so many other people, like, you see, I saw a meme on Instagram, shock, of this girl being like, oh, she put all of the things that she had to do that, like, in general, into a spinning wheel. I think I sent you this video actually. I think I sent it you on Instagram being like, this is me, because it's like everything is equally important, and she just ended up putting every single thing that she needed to do into the Google spinny name wheel of names, and just spinning the wheel, cause she was at a carnival and she was like, oh, post on Instagram or reply to DMs or whatever. So like the question that I want to ask you, based on if we've got the definition of output versus impact on lock, then once you create that impact, how do you somehow like put a cap on how much you could then do? Because in my mind I'm like, oh wow, well if I can have, you know, impact in 3 hours, that's another 3 hours that I can make even more impact, right? So it's like, where do we find the line between what constitutes enough once we do find that impact, right?
Yeah. All right. There are two ways, at least two ways to approach this. One is from more the productivity angle. So in that case, you know, I really like that saying that when everything is urgent, nothing is urgent. Or when everything is important, nothing really is important. Priorities exist for a reason. And actually, up until I think like the Industrial Revolution, the word priority only had like singular use. You know, we came up with priorities after that because we got way too busy to just have one priority. But I like that because when you think about it, in one day, it works really well if you have just a few priorities for the day. So from the productivity angle, it is really learning to prioritize. And now, look, I'm going to rope in the human design aspect here because I've just been doing so much human design work lately. So, you know, you're a generator in human design. Generators are, you know, always complimented to be very consistent, to be the builders, like a lot of consistent energy. But the thing is, that consistent energy is there only if there is excitement. And if you take 15 tasks that you have for the day, you will probably be able to recognize in your body which of them would feel more exciting versus the others. Even that already tells you that not everything carries the same weight, right, from human design perspective. Then, for example, I'm a projector. I work best when I'm truly focused. So I cannot do more than 2 priorities a day because I need to laser focus, you know, like a laser. That's how my energy needs to work. And then if you're a manifesting generator and I tell you choose one thing, you will probably shoot yourself in the foot because you'll be that bored. So, you know, like you also need to have the understanding, all right, you know, what kind of subtle energy that I'm working with. But then coming back to the productivity part is, you know, how are you prioritizing and how you're goaling? Because you could achieve a lot of things, but probably not everything, absolutely everything at once. So just understanding which goals are more front row this quarter and maybe, you know, focusing on those and then parking some of them for next quarter. So, you know, work on that. But also there is like the mindset part. The mindset part is very important for the day to day. You know, like as you say, I want to work 4 hours and I'm super focused. I know what I need to prioritize on. That's amazing. And my 4 hours are here. I've done work and then I need to close my laptop and I need to step away. And this is where the whole other thing starts. So the first thing here, where we expect to feel a feeling of enoughness. Okay, I've done enough for today. You know, I can step away. That's kind of how we imagine it's going to happen. But the truth is, from what I've seen in my work, when you're a high-achieving woman, high-performing woman, that sense of enoughness does not come naturally. And if you wait to feel enough,
you wait forever.
A really long time. So in that case, enough for the day needs to become a decision. You need to decide beforehand what is enough for today. And you're right, in one of our one-on-ones, we talked about that. And I recommended you a simple exercise to try. So take a look at all of your to-dos for the day. Select your top 3 priorities, like they could be big tasks, small tasks, whatever feels that really needs your attention. And then on the bottom, draw a line. And after that, you can add a few more if you feel like you have capacity for more tasks today. And then start, of course, with the things that you have already prioritized. So start from the top of the list. One big problem that I see with to-do lists is that when the to-do list is very long and there is no logical structure to it, we're like, oh, I should start from the top. No, I should start from the bottom. No, I should do something from the middle. You know, we jump a lot. But when you prioritize it this way and you say, okay, these are my top 3, there is a line. So when you get to the line of the 3 tasks, you have a choice. You create a visual line, literally the line, and now you have a choice. Okay, so I've already done the 3 most important tasks for today, and I've already agreed with myself that that is enough. So I've already rocked it. That's amazing. And now there's the line. So do I choose to go and do something for myself, something for fun, something for my health? Like, do I want to spend time with my favorite people? Do I want to take the dog for a walk? Or if I really feel truly, authentically, you know, without faking it, in my good energy, and I feel like today is my day to put a little bit more work, then I could also make the conscious choice to continue with my tasks that are under. But then each task I'm going to treat as a bonus. I'll be like, oh my God, and I did this, and I did this, because we want that sense of satisfaction to come from something. You know, so we need to put a target of what is enough, what is more than enough, and then celebrate it. Jesus Christ, let's make work a little bit more fun.
Yeah, oh my God, no. I think like the celebration element, I think, is like really missing, I think, from a lot of just like in general, like founder life, I think, is like we, you know, the whole like, oh, well, you know, I can't celebrate this because for me it was an obligation to achieve it. Yeah. It's like, that I think is way too prevalent, I think, in like founder culture of like, well, you know, this is what I chose, this is what I gave myself, but actually like that ability to just be able to, I don't know, it's like almost a receiving thing. Like if you talk about abundance, it's this, the ability to receive, you know, the praise from yourself of having done enough, right? Because we're also, you know, maybe you're trying to slightly rewire subconsciously whoever's voice it is that's telling you that you're not doing enough. Is to be able to, I don't know, whether it's either like reparent yourself or at least just give yourself a little bit of praise and be like, you know, this is enough. You get to go play now. You get to, you know, you've done all your homework. You get to go, you know, like, but then also I think there's a couple of things that stand out to me. And like, obviously because we've talked about this, I've done a lot of reflecting on this myself. And it's come, like, I'm a big stickler for a big, long to-do list. Like, I mean, everything that I ever need to do in my life is probably on a to-do list. So like, you know, mine's like the length of the next 80 years that I'll hopefully be alive. So like wake up, go to have breakfast, whatever. And I think that especially when you're in a situation where, you know, as a founder, things are a little bit less like, because I never used to feel like this at work. If I was like, oh, I didn't manage to get this done, I'd be like, oh, well, I'll do it tomorrow. Bye. Like I get to go and hang out with my friends or go to a bar or whatever like I want to do. But like I think for me, what I've realized, or the biggest breakthrough that I've had about like my to-do list or this feeling of never having done enough is the idea of control, right? So it's like, it feels, having a to-do list is basically like, what I've realized is my like attempt as just one woman to try and at least feel like I'm in control of my fate, when actually like the way I was thinking about it is like one of my favorite quotes in the world is like, the how is not for you to decide, right? So it's like whenever you have this wish, like whether that's to make a certain amount of money or you want to have a certain experience or travel to a certain place, like it's this idea that you will get whatever is planted on your heart divinely, but you can't imagine the how because the universe works in mysterious ways, right? So it's like our to-do list is just us trying to understand and trying to manipulate the universe into something happening exactly how I imagine that if I do all these things on my to-do list, I'll be rich and successful and hot and a millionaire and it'll be great. But all of those things might come in for me at a time that I never expected it, in a way that I never expected. Like you can only see that in hindsight, right? So I think for me, like that was a big breakthrough, is this idea of like, whatever you're currently trying to work towards, like, just know that if it's something that you really desire and you continue showing up in whatever way, literally any step is the right step, because you don't know exactly how life will unfold for you to get the thing that you want. So in that sense, like, anything off your to-do list is good. Because you've just made that little bid to the universe to be like, I still want this, just letting you know, definitely still want this, but the how you can't control. And just taking any action is you taking the next step on your already divinely, sort of like, your already divinely decided timeline, in my opinion. So that's been a really big help for me as well. Like the practical, like 3 things and then a line, beautiful for the day-to-day. It's worked a charm. Love it. Best thing ever. And then also, like you say, when that line comes, that's when you have to do the mental work, I feel. Right?
Yeah, that's really the conscious decision. Because a lot of us go on autopilot for a very for a big part of the day, and especially if you're very used to work with a long to-do list, you don't stop between tasks. You're like, right, okay, next one, autopilot. And it's so interesting to hear your relationship with the to-do list, because it made me also think about mine. And I was like, what is a to-do list for me? And I think it is a little bit different. I think for me, a to-do list is kind of like a way to free space in my brain, kind of like brain dump. So probably it's a little bit less about control, and it's a little bit more of just making sure I don't forget something, making sure that I kind of, have my ducks in a row, and, I don't drop the shoe somewhere. It's more like that. So I feel like it's less control, more urgency for me. And sometimes coming from urgency is really energy draining, because again, I could slip into a pattern where, I need to do this, and this. And then like I feel sometimes even my heart rate is elevated when I work on these tasks, because I'm kind of running a sprint in my brain with this to-do list,
Yeah.
So I think as a tool, a to-do list is super good. It can serve so many purposes, but we also need to think whether it is adding extra control, extra pressure, extra fear, extra expectations, what is it? And and find like such a simple way to introduce the feeling of, okay, now I have a pause here in my to-do list, in my day, and now I kind of get to be an adult, which I am, and make a conscious choice, and not just run on some patterns that I've been running on, in the last 10 years. So that feeling of making more conscious choices about how we engage with our time and energy during the day actually makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because I don't do this, but my partner does this, right? And I think this is like he's found this hack somewhere that I've actually not thought about until you've just mentioned it here. But I think there's also an interesting hack, or maybe like an interesting frame of stopping doing a task when you're in the middle of it versus when you finished it. Because I think sometimes I get into a little bit of a thing where the moments where I like self-sabotage, or the moments where I want to scroll on Instagram, is after finishing one task before starting another, right? Because like I've now ticked this off, and I'm like, okay, this is like my 5 minutes of breathing air before I go back into the sprint. And I think that's where a lot of that self-sabotage can happen. Whereas like maybe, I think oftentimes like you can even find a good place to stop in the work that you're currently doing, to take a break where you know that you'd be able to find that thread again easily to get back into that work. That's like my partner does that all the time, where he's like, I'm at a good stopping point to be able to get back into this. Well, I've never done that. I've never given myself permission to finish something, like to just like take a break in the middle where I know that I could very easily reintroduce myself into the task.
Actually, this is so curious, but I just did that today, and I never thought it in such a structured way, like it is a thing, but I did that, and actually I know what the driver was for me. So keep in mind, 3 years ago I just could not stop. Like, I don't know if just recently I was telling that to somebody, maybe it was also you. that 3-4 years ago, everything I had to do in my life had to be productive. Like even if I love reading books, but you know that up until 4 years ago, I didn't read fiction. I would only do non-fiction, growth books, self-development books, because even my reading time had to be productive. So I had to prove to myself that if I'm going to spend 2 hours reading, at least I'm learning something. And this is mental, Elizabeth. You know, you can't even just enjoy a book. What is that? But I'm just using this as a way to show, you know, how much, like what a different relationship I had with productivity. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like now I'm thinking, who is this person? And who used to be this person who ruled my brain? But anyhow, so, you know, coming back to making that line and feeling like it's enough for the day, now I have caught myself that more and more I get this beautiful, juicy, very satisfying feeling where I think, okay, I've had enough for today and I can close the laptop and work away, even if not everything is perfectly done. And this comes because of this very beautiful also self-awareness. I know that in my day there comes a time, it's a tipping point. So when I reach this tipping point, I know that the time that I put, I'm gonna get less and less and less results for the time that I put. So this is the tipping point when my brain goes like, okay, if I put 1 hour in, I'm gonna get one entity of impact, which is, you know, the minimum. You know, it feels like the minimum we should be getting, right? Like if I could get more impact, that's amazing. But there comes a time when 1 hour is going to start being equal to less units, like 0.8 units, 0.5, and at some point it's going to come to 0. And if I'm still putting hours, then it means that I'm not really using my time very well. So when I get to that tipping point, instead of forcing impact and not really getting it, right? Like I know that at this point it's better use of my time to go and do something that is more restoring. And sometimes that is even just working on something creative just for fun. But I know that I need to step away from my laptop or step away from that task because I'm just not getting as much as I would like to get out of it. So, you know, this proportion switches. And I think it's a very interesting experiment to try to see where that tipping point is for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think like you've reminded me of like I used to do that with I noticed when I used to play like Animal Crossing. That's like my like used to be my like wind down time, right? It's play Switch. I actually have it with me, so I might do that later. But I noticed I got into a habit of trying to play it really quickly, and I'm like, why am I in a rush? I don't understand. Like, I was like, why am I trying to like chop wood at a rate of knots? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like it seeps into everything that you're doing. But the thing that you actually reminded me of as well is like, first of all, a really interesting one for me is like I noticed that my habit to like scroll, you know, like pick up your phone and just like scroll a little bit on Instagram. That is my like. I need a break, but I'm not letting myself have one because I think being sat in front of my laptop is more productive. And then there's another element to this, which is that I think there's a distinct lack for a lot of people, especially for like founders, of hobbies or passions that are so strong that they pull you away from work, right? Like when you were a kid, it was really easy to stop doing your homework because you wanted to go out and play and you wanted to, you wanted to play a video game or you wanted to do some painting or whatever. But like we've devalued all of those like fun things so much as adults that there is basically nothing that you're so excited to do that you can't wait to finish the work to go and do it. And I think that there's like being like cultivating those a little bit more, I think is maybe also a really interesting path to being able to be like, oh, I physically can't wait to, as much as amazing as the work is, I think it's almost a little challenge to set to yourself to be like, can I find something that I'm so obsessed with that I'm like, right, okay, enough, like laptop down, I'm gonna go do this instead.
This is so true. This is so, so true. And I don't think it's founders only necessarily. I think that we devalue play and joy in our lives once we get into building our career and taking ourselves as serious business people or serious career people or serious entrepreneurs. But as you say, we need to know why we're doing certain things. And I find the suggestion to go and find something that you're also passionate about that does not correlate exactly with the business is actually a super good idea. And I feel like different people could find that in different places. Maybe that is sports, maybe that is team sports. I feel like added accountability really helps. Maybe it's like go spend time with the people that you love. Maybe that's your family, maybe that's your friends, right? Like volunteering, like something that really pulls you in, like find a hobby, right? And yeah, just think about how much joy and creativity would actually feed your business and the way that you show up in your business in such positive ways. There's so much research already done that like introducing playfulness and gamifying certain experiences at work boost creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, working with other people, all of these things that we actually really, really need as solopreneurs and entrepreneurs as well. So actually when we deny ourselves to experience more play and joy, we also deny ourselves to bring all of the beautiful results of these experiences into our business. And I also feel like we don't speak a lot about that, especially in more professional environments, but actually the energy that you bring to your business is so important. Because if you think about the people that you like to invest in, just think about them. Probably they're the people who seem very vibrant, like they have this, love for what they do and the zest for what they do, and they have a vibe, and all of this comes from your energy. It doesn't come from your followers on Instagram, it just comes from how you show up from yourself. And that's why it's so important to nurture that energy, because it is not a well that is forever, right? Like it needs to come from somewhere. So we can then repurpose it in the business. So even if it's not pure love for something else, you can start thinking, okay, I kind of need something outside, so it recharges my energy and I can bring it back into work. So it's still, win-win.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's that. Yeah, I think that's an amazing point to end on as well. It's like very much as you said in the beginning, like your success is only as big as your capacity to enjoy it. And expanding your capacity to enjoy it will already make you so much more rich in life and so much more successful than you even know. So yeah. Oh, thanks so much, Nicole. It's been amazing to have you. And where can we find you? Give us some places to find you, just as like a parting gift.
It has been so nice to talk to you, and I really loved that we touched upon, a little bit more unconventional questions, so I was super happy we did it. You can find me on socials. My favorite place to hang out is LinkedIn, so you can find me there. Maybe Elizabeth could also link that.
All in the show notes, of course.
Yes, and from there you can learn more about my work, you can learn more about, how you can connect with me, so really it is almost like a landing page. You could also find me on Instagram, that's like my more intimate community and where I show up with my shenanigans and creative ideas. And finally, you can listen to my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, really the big podcasts. It's called Sanely Successful, and yeah, I would love to have you there as well.
Oh, amazing. Nicole, thank you so much. I'm so glad that we had this conversation. And thank you everyone for listening. We shall see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.